Hello guys, and welcome back to another YouTube educational short. So today I'm going to go through some training tips with you, but slightly more advanced than the basic stuff that you're seeing on social media at the moment. So I'm going to go through the active ranges and passive ranges of a muscle movement, actually training the required muscle in its length and range and its shortened range, and also its path of direction as well. Now, I know all of that sounds very complicated, and most people just want to pick weight up and put weight down. Of course, that's going to build muscle, but is it going to build muscle in an optimal way? Is it going to lead you to the most productive results? And is it also going to prevent you from frustration, injury, and also just banging the same drum for a long period of time with minimal results and minimal returns? So let's dive in. Probably the easiest one for me to demonstrate while sat in an office chair is probably the pec fibers. Now, this is a very commonly incorrect or misunderstood or mistrained muscle group, and probably one of the most underdeveloped muscle groups that I commonly hear anecdotally from clients, people asking for advice. It's the same comment: how do I grow my chest? How do I get a bigger chest? How do I build the top fibers of the chest? How do I build the central fibers of the chest? Now, some of that is going to come down to genetics. We are all built differently. We all have different structures. We all have different lever lengths. And what I mean by that is different origins and insertions of the muscle, so where they start and where they end. We all have different size bodies. We all have different size upper. We all have different lengths of arms. And these are all going to play a part in how we train and how we position ourselves for the movement. And I might do a later video that actually shows demonstrations in the gym so we can actually put it into context. But while I'm sat in an office chair, I'll try my hardest to explain it. So where we start with the chest, obviously in at the sternum is where it originates, and then it comes across to the top of the arm up here, up into the shoulder girdle, and attaches up here. So you can see already this is forming a pretty accurate line as to which way the muscle goes. So what we want to think about is training the muscle within that line. Now, if we imagine, and trying to simplify this as much as possible, we're trying to get that line as long as possible, all the way out here, and then as short as possible, all the way out here. Now, recent studies show that the most adaptive change or the most hypertrophy is stimulated in the length and range, so out here where it's its hardest. Now, we want to spend a long period of time training within that range to gain and to optimize muscle growth as much as possible. There's not much return within the shortened range here. And if we translate that into training, let's take a dumbbell chest press, for example. It's fucking hard and heavy down at the bottom when we're stretched and when we're in a lengthened position, because one, we're mechanically weaker. Two, the weight ratio is much heavier. When we're up at the top, the muscle's nice and short, is nice and strong up there. And also, if we position ourselves, our hands are locked out nice and straight. So the weight becomes, I don't want to say lighter, but it will feel lighter at the top due to mechanics, due to weight resistance, and due to the position of the muscle. So we want to position ourselves where the exercise is going to be the hardest and also gain the most returns. So this is where we have to be a little bit more analytical, because like I say, everybody's built different. Everybody has different heights, different lever lengths, different origins and insertions of the muscle. If I say to someone, go to a bench, set it up on an incline of 5 and lift 30 kilos and you will grow your chest, that's set up for me. That's not set up for everybody else. So this is where we have to trial and error, find what suits, find what feels, find what works best. And this is why if you've got a coach, sending form videos are essential, because they'll be able to look and analyze your form and say, right, if we drop it down a pin, or if we increase it up a pin, or if you puff your chest up like this or accentuate the thorax like this, then this is going to engage the chest more. Now, when we position ourselves within this movement, probably one of the most common mistakes that I see is the shoulders forward. People are kind of driving their shoulders forward and they're thinking about pushing the weight away from themselves as much as possible. And that's where you see this kind of slunched in and push and almost like shrug to the chest. Now, a saying that I kind of live by and adopted a long time is whatever's on top is getting trained. Now, if we're pushing our shoulders forward, and again, this correlates to a lot of feedback that I get where people say my shoulders hurt when I chest press, it's because the shoulders are the one that are taking the most weight. They're taking the load. Now, what we want to do is present the chest almost, bring the chest up and elevate up so that that is on top. And you can already see that that has brought up my chest and it has presented the chest up. So I know that that's what's going to get trained. Next is going to be the position. Now, another common mistake that I see is the arms out here. Now, again, if we're talking about that line of path in which the muscle moves here, if I'm pressing up here, that's not targeting this kind of direct line down here. However, if I drop the elbow down and present the chest up and then drive from here, if you literally did that, you'll be able to feel just the muscle engage and contract so much more. Also, what we're not doing here is putting negative force on a joint or pressure on a joint. If we're massively out here holding 30, 40, 50, whatever kilo dumbbells, how much pressure and force is going through this joint here, because there's so much dead space going on down there. Now, this is where kind of mechanics and angles and stuff come into it. And I'm not expecting people to pull out their protractors and, start getting all science and mathematical on it. But you go by feel, you go by engagement, you go by what we know. And if we're creating that direct path that we're trying to hit the chest, down here is going to be much more advantageous. Also, it's going to allow us to get much deeper within that range as well, because we can literally get all the way down because the shoulder is going to allow it. We're going to have much more elbow flexion. And as we drive up, we're going to be able to get that muscle nice and short, which again is going to lead to more strength, more growth, more adaptation. Now, let's simplify it a little bit and let's go with a bicep. So, biceps nice and simple. Radius and ulna, up here at the top of the shoulder girdle. That's its length and range. That's its shortened range. So that is as far as the muscle will go. It will not go any further. Anything else is going to be a hyperextension, which is just going to snap your arm. Anything up here is going to have to come from the shoulder and raise up. Now, things that we have to take into consideration here, again, is going to be joint health. It's going to be the angle and also pressure and negative force. So let's use a preacher curl, for example. And again, this is going to come completely individual based because we all have different flexibility. We all have different range of motions. Now, the easiest way to explain this is if you turn your hands up and see how far you can actually rotate your wrist without getting pressure down the forearm here. You don't want to feel any pressure or any stress down your forearm because that's just going to put negative load within a joint that we don't want. The joint that we want to train is up here towards the bicep. So doing an Olympic bar curl might be okay for someone because they've got that flexibility within their arms. Other people, not so much. I can't because I sit like this. So something like an easy bar or a nitro preacher curl where you have the adjustable handles work perfectly because that will allow you to work within your natural range and not put pressure in the joint, but also accurately hit the muscle that we're trying to target. So that kind of simplifies exercise selection. And you always get this meat and potatoes, like we need to do the hard stuff. Sometimes there's things that just won't suit your mechanics. And this is why I tend to opt for like a D handle cable curl, because the D handle will allow you to use your range of motion because it's flexible material. Also, the resistance profile on the machine is much smoother, much nicer. We're not getting that negative load and then like real light at the top, because there's no drop off, there's no resistance from it. So working back within angles, we've also got to think about the shoulder. Some of us are internally rotated within the shoulders, which again is going to bring those arms in, which is going to drive us more from this angle. So the position we want to be in, again, is pronouncing that chest, is presenting it up, bringing it back. You know, use a shoulder pad, use a back support that you can lean up against, present your chest, drive back, stretch out the bicep, get it as long as physically possible. And that will give you like a far deeper stretch, far more pressure, far more execution, and far better pumps as well. You know, one of the biggest things that I see is these kind of these partial reps, but within the shortened range up here, because for lack of a better word, ego lifters don't want to drop the weight, and also they don't want to train down there because it fucking hurts and it's fucking hard, and you have to use lighter weight. So it doesn't marry to the ego, unfortunately, but your muscles don't give a shit about the ego. They care about stimulus and they care about intensity. So we want to make sure that we are spending as much time in those lengthened positions as possible. So to kind of close up on this one, if I can give you some tips on this, it's spend time in that lengthened position, really focus on the pull and the stretch down there. And if we're training something like a chest or a bicep, what we can do is implement things like tempo and execution. So if I was to give you a little homework on this one, what I want you to do is your next bicep exercise or your next chest exercise, think about spending as much time in that stretch position as possible. But what I want to do is add some context to that. So let's take the bicep, for example. When you're stretching down in that eccentric, focus on a 4-second eccentric. So count down 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold in that eccentric for 2 seconds. Really feel that stretch. Squeeze up and then straight back down into a 4-second eccentric. The pumps you will get and the DOMs you will get the next day is confirmation that that is a more optimal way of doing it. So guys, thank you very much for listening. As always, much love, stay blessed, and I'll see you all soon.